All right, you smarty pants, ready for a deep dive that'll knock your socks off. Today we're dissecting the art of stage domination, from plaster to giant. Sounds like a real banger, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, we're getting down to the nitty-gritty here. How to turn a pile of plaster into a sensation and fool all of humanity in the process.
Exactly. The good old Cardiff giant. Imagine this. They find a giant guy made of plaster and the whole nation goes crazy. What can we learn from that? That people seem to really love fake news as long as it's big enough.
Well, it is tempting to believe in something special. A little bit of magic in everyday life, who wouldn't want that?
So that's where our friend P.T. Barnum comes in. The master of manipulation, the king of humbug. He smelled a rat right away and thought to himself, there's more to this.
And bam, he builds his own giant and puts it on display. Oh, copy, whatever. The main thing is that the cash register is ringing.
The moral of the story. The truth is often boring. What really captivates people are stories, myths, illusions, all the things that they don't see every day.
The author calls the Cardiff giant a metaphor for stage presence. A performer is like a plaster cast, at first just raw material. But with the right staging, they become a crowd magnet.
Does that mean any boring person can become a star if they just know how to fool people?
Not quite, but the author does say, you don't win hearts with boring ideas. You have to provoke, challenge, shake people up.
And how do you do that? By turning words into weapons. Sounds almost dangerous.
In principle, yes. The author describes the stage as an interrogation room where the performer uses their words to put the audience through the ringer.
Okay, and what does such a verbal attack look like? Does he have any examples?
For example, where were you last night? Who are you with? Why does it feel like no one will ever see you again? Pretty intense, right?
Sounds like he was having a bad day. But seriously, what's the point?
It's about arousing curiosity and creating uncertainty at the same time. The questions are so open that they continue to work in the viewer's mind.
So people sit there and ponder. Sounds more like a therapy session than entertainment.
But that's exactly the point. You tear the audience out of its passivity and force it to actively engage with what's happening.
Okay, but isn't that a little manipulative? You can really mess people up with questions like that.
Yes, that's part of the game. Through this uncertainty, through the targeted creation of confusion, the performer gains a kind of psychological control over the audience.
Sounds almost like brainwashing. But if it works, why not?
It's not about turning people into mindless puppets, but you steer their thoughts by asking them questions they can't answer. You lead them down a path of confusion and leave them there with their own thoughts.
So a kind of intellectual journey through the labyrinth of confusion. Sounds almost philosophical.
In principle, yes. The author also emphasizes that these techniques don't just work on stage, but also in other areas of life, like politics or advertising.
That's true. Everywhere where it's about convincing people, influencing them, similar strategies are used. Whether that's ethical or not is another question.
Now we come to an exciting point. The author actually recommends his book, Poetry Master Poetry Power in 7 Days, to learn these techniques in more detail.
The master of manipulation gives tutoring. I'm curious to see what he's going to pull out of his hat. But before we all turn into rhetoric geniuses, let's take a short break. In part 2 of our deep dive, we'll delve deeper into the secrets of the poetry master. Stay tuned. It's going to be magical.
Well, did you survive the thinking break? Then let's continue with the text. We were stuck on the question of how to manipulate the masses with words in a positive sense, of course.
Right. Our author, the stage guru, has another secret tip. His book, Poetry Master Poetry Power in 7 Days. I guess he wants to teach us how to conquer the world with rhymes.
Well, I wouldn't put it quite so dramatically, but it is about how to turn poetry into an emotional experience that captivates the audience.
So a kind of poetry crash course for aspiring stage hypnotists. Sounds almost too good to be true.
The author promises that with his techniques, you can specifically control the emotions of the audience. So every performance becomes an unforgettable experience, at least for the viewers. Whether the speaker then also has fun is another question.
Well, I'm curious about that. But honestly, do we really need such manipulative techniques to inspire an audience?
Yeah.
Isn't it enough to just tell a good story?
That depends on what you want to achieve. If you just want to fool around a bit, a funny anecdote might be enough. But if you want to make people think, if you want to awaken their deepest emotions, then you need a bit more fireworks.
So a kind of emotional roller coaster ride for the synapses. Sounds almost like a mixture of therapy and entertainment.
You could call it that. It's about capturing the audience's attention, grabbing them emotionally, and giving them something to think about for a long time.
And all that with a few rhymes. I'm skeptical, but let's hear it.
Of course, it's not enough to just string a few words together. It's about the Right choice of words, the rhythm, the emphasis, the pauses. You have to use language in a way that creates images in the audience's mind, evokes emotions, and stimulates thought.
Okay, that sounds a bit more challenging. But let's say I master these magical poetry arts. Am I automatically a master of manipulation?
No, of course not. It's not about controlling other people or imposing your will on them. It's about understanding the power of language and using it consciously. You can make people laugh, make them cry, make them think, but you should always do it with respect and a sense of responsibility.
So a kind of ethical manipulation. Sounds like a contradiction in terms.
Perhaps, but I think it's important to address these issues, even if you don't plan to be on stage professionally.
Why? Isn't it enough if politicians and advertising people master these tricks?
No, because we all communicate with other people every day. And the techniques of stage presence can help us express ourselves more clearly, convincingly, and authentically.
Okay, that makes sense. But why do I need poetry? Isn't it enough to just speak clearly and understandably?
Poetry is more than just words strung together. It's an art form that helps us express our thoughts and feelings in a new, creative way. It can touch us, inspire us, make us think. And if you master this power of poetry, you can also use it to improve your communication with other people.
Sounds almost as if poetry is a secret weapon for a better world. But honestly, isn't that all a bit exaggerated?
Maybe. But I find it exciting to explore such ideas and see what language is capable of.
Me too. But before we all become poetry gurus, let's take a little break. In part 3 of our deep dive, we'll look at how to apply the art of stage presence in everyday life.
Stay tuned.
It's going to be exciting. Welcome back to the grand finale. After plaster giants and poetry manipulation, things are getting serious now.
Yeah.
How do we apply these stage tricks in real life without having to hold a poetry slam?
Don't worry, we don't have to go that far. The author of Poetry Master does give some practical tips on how to specifically address the emotions of the audience, in this case, our fellow human beings.
Okay, spill the beans. How do I manipulate my colleagues without the boss noticing?
Very simple. With the right choice of words. Arouse strong emotions, create images in the mind. That's how boring office blah blah becomes a rousing story.
Sounds good. Instead of the coffee's gone, it's better to say, our caffeine reserves have sunk to a threatening level. We need reinforcements. Something like that.
Exactly. Dramatic, vivid, emotional. That's how you stay in people's minds.
And what about the dramaturgy? Should set up a fog machine and play dramatic music at every presentation now?
Well, it doesn't have to be that theatrical. But building suspense, pausing, changing the tempo, all of that makes a presentation more interesting.
So like a good Netflix series, with cliffhangers and plot twists?
Basically, yes. You have to keep people on the edge of their seats, make them curious, and surprise them again and again.
Sounds exhausting. Do I have to be a screenwriter on top of my job now?
It's not that bad, but a little practice doesn't hurt. Because if you manage to captivate the audience emotionally, you've already won.
True. Emotions beat facts. P.T. Barnum already knew that. But what about body language? Is fidgeting allowed?
Absolutely not. Gestures, facial expressions, eye contact, all of this influences how we affect others.
So don't slouch around like a couch potato, but body tension, eye contact, power posing.
Exactly. Show presence, radiate self-confidence, support the message with your whole body.
Okay, let me sum it up. Stage presence is more than just shouting loudly. It's a mixture of rhetoric, acting, and a pinch of psychology. Can you even learn that, or do you need a natural talent for it?
Talent helps, of course, but you can also train it. The author of Poetry Master shows that anyone can improve their communication skills with a little practice.
Well, then let's go. From now on, every small talk will be a stage highlight. But seriously, where is the line between charming rhetoric and nasty manipulation?
That's a good question that you could discuss for a long time. It always depends on the intention. Do I want to use other people for my own ends, or do I want to inspire them with my message?
Okay, so take responsibility. Don't just throw words around. Sounds reasonable. But isn't that all a bit much effort for a simple chat at the coffee machine?
Well, everyone decides for themselves how much energy they invest in their communication. But I think it's worth using language consciously and understanding its effect.
Right, because words can build bridges, but they can also build walls. And who wants to sit in an office that is characterized by communication breakdowns and misunderstandings?
Absolutely. So my tip, read Poetry Master, practice diligently, and make the world a place of more eloquent communication.
In this sense, curtain call, applause, and do forget the bouquet.
Goodbye, and see you at the next deep dive.
So long, and remember, practice makes perfect master manipulator.